Hello, everyone. Welcome to the ADHD Love workshop. I'm really glad you're here. I applaud you for making time for this. It feels like a really important topic that honestly is really hard to find information about. Even as a therapist, I've had trouble finding stuff that's not from the 90s or weird or judgy from a non-ADHD partner's perspective. So that's what I'm hoping to speak to today. We also have therapists here. We have people from Sweden and Washington. So you're all very welcome. Let's start with me. I'm Lacey. I recently moved to Sweden from Seattle. I was in the Seattle area for so long, and now we're in Sweden, which is crazy and awesome. I'm a trained therapist. I have practices in the US and in Sweden now. I also have extra training in being an ADHD clinical services provider, which basically just means I've learned a lot about ADHD and how to help people who have it. And in this case, it's a little bit of a family or it's a broad diagnosis because ADHD affects not only the person who has it, but kind of everyone else in their life. So that's why you're here. I have ADHD as well as two of my three kids. I was diagnosed about 3 years ago. And I've been married to my very neurotypical husband for 14 years. So for most of our marriage, we didn't know that I had ADHD. It seemed like a lot of interesting personality things. And these conflicts from some of my ADHD symptoms have turned into sometimes landmines between us, sometimes dynamics and cycles that aren't super healthy that we have had to do a lot of work to name, understand, address, start to work on together. So in this presentation, you'll be getting some of my professional insight as well as some personal insight, and they're going to overlap because I'm a human and it's all in here. So hopefully that is helpful for me to be able to speak from both a clinical lens and a personal lens. I'm hoping that will be cool. So, and hope maybe make this a little more interesting and not so just cognitive and dry. Okay, so what will we be doing for this next 40 minutes or so? First, I'm going to try to paint a picture of what ADHD can do in a relationship, and specifically how you might be feeling, some of the struggles you might be having as a non-ADHD partner in that relationship. We're then going to transition a little bit to talk quickly about what ADHD is and isn't, because your correct information about ADHD, myth busting about ADHD is going to be really important to lay the groundwork for the third part of this talk, which is kind of an action plan. Not always actions for you, but even just changing mindset. Like what can we do? Where can we go? How can you feel more empowered in this relationship? Because ADHD can potentially be making you feel a little bit like stuck and victimized, I'd say. You're kind of powerless against it, maybe. So I'm hoping to give you some of that power back and give you some ways to actively work towards a better relationship with your partner. So let's get into it. Now we'll talk about you and why you're here. So potentially you have someone in your life who has ADHD, or you strongly suspect they have ADHD. Your journey together might look something like this. You meet. This person's interesting, kind, funny, awesome, creative, full of life and different activities, maybe busy with a lot of different things, curious. They're awesome. And you love that about them. They also are probably generally, people with ADHD are really kind and empathetic. And so maybe that drew you to them, and things are great. This is exciting. then what? You're like starting to realize after some time, this person does some interesting things. They make some interesting choices. You might call them bad life decisions, or they might be starting to seem irresponsible to you, or why didn't you think that through? And then maybe the thought occurs to you, maybe someone never told this person how life works. And so you're going to be the one to tell them, and you're going to inform them, you're going to help them. Maybe you'll help them make, little processes and stuff that are going to help. And then after some time, you might be like, this guy who's like, okay, so I've helped a lot, and I've jumped in and rescued, and we've had conversations, and the same things keep happening, and that's starting to get kind of annoying. And you're thinking it's not mattering how much I helped. It's not actually helping them. They're not changing. So you start to get mad, maybe take it personally. Then if you let it go on long enough, we end up with this guy. You might be really at the end of your rope, really frustrated, genuinely wondering if this is going to work long term or not. You might be at a point kind of despair because things don't seem to be getting better. There may be big emotional blow-ups. You might be shouting, yelling, silent treatment. These are some of the dynamics that can happen when someone's feeling out of control. You might both be feeling out of control. There's more questions than answers. Okay, so let's zoom in a little bit onto this experience. I've listed 8 thoughts that I have talked through with my husband that he's had, that other people have had in his position, being partnered with someone who has ADHD. Number 1, sometimes I feel like the only adult in the room. You might have developed a lack of trust towards your partner because they're kind of unreliable. You might feel like you can't trust them to come through for you, that you have to keep your eye on everything. And you can't kind of, what should I say, like let your guard down. You're always a little bit on because you're not sure that they are when they need to be. Number 2, our home life is chaos and it's not my fault. You might be trying so hard to make systems and keep things in order and keep things clean, and your partner might seem apathetic / actively working against you in this. And you're starting to wonder, maybe they like the chaos. They must not care is number 3. So it can start to feel personal when your partner forgets things, does things that they know bug you, leave towels on the ground, not notice that they haven't shut any cabinets in the kitchen, or walk away when the stove's on. You might take this personally because if you were to do those things, you would know you were doing them, and it would be an active, or a passive aggression. So you're interpreting their actions with an intentionality that probably isn't there, but we'll go into that in a minute. But it's feeling like it's personal. Number 4 gets kind of deep. At the beginning, when we were back with the smiley face guy, your ADHD partner might have been fixated on you, focused on you, super into you, right? Hyper focused. And now that you've been together a little bit, you might get this sense that you've slid to the background, that you are not exciting enough, not novel enough to keep their attention. And that can be really painful. Number 5 is, why can't they just listen? There's 2 things maybe that you're observing here. One is an actual lack of focus or attention when they're when you're talking to them, when they're talking to you. Their mind might be wandering, and it might be hard to get them to focus in. The other thing you might be noticing is a lot of interrupting, which again, to you, you might interpret this as that they're not listening, they're not absorbing what you're saying. Really what's happening is their mind's going so fast, they're like 10 sentences ahead. They've kind of understood what you're saying, probably. Not an excuse not to slow down, but from your perspective, this is going to feel really annoying. Also, if you bring up something even couched in really nice words like, hey, next time you use the stove, could you turn it off when you're done? And you're like, this is really logical, and I'm saying it really nice. They might get defensive about that. I don't know anyone who does that. But the defensiveness is from a lifetime of shame, to be fair, but it still can be frustrating to feel not heard, that they can't absorb what you're saying, or it becomes a big thing. Number 6, I'm too tired to connect. We'll talk more about this in the next slide, but when your daily life is mismanaged, time isn't managed well, your family, your relationship, the stuff you're doing together might be kind of in chaos, things are running late, you guys are behind, you just might be tired by the end of the day, too tired to connect, too tired to have quality time, also maybe some like frustrations around there. This one I meant to reword, so I apologize if this is triggering in any way. All I meant with it is that in an ADHD, non-ADHD relationship, there can become this like parent-child relationship. Ari Tuckman, who is another therapist I'm going to talk about a lot in this presentation, he calls it the over-under functioner. Dynamic between couples where one is kind of like nagging and the other one's like always getting in trouble. And that does not lend itself to sexual intimacy. That kind of dynamic really puts a wet blanket on things. So you might not, we'll talk more about sex on the next slide, but you might just not be interested. This isn't working for you. I used to be fun. There might be parts of your personality, back on our smiley face guy, where you also were fun, sometimes impulsive, had interesting hobbies, but now over time you might be polarized because there's a lot of responsibilities you've taken on because your partner isn't, and so you're like the responsible one and they're like the fun one, and neither of those are they're kind of caricatures of who you two are. But the point is that you feel kind of pushed into this, like, I don't really want to nag you all the time, but if I don't, so you've made me into this boring, heavy person. We're gonna go even deeper here into sex. So what about sex? In this type of relationship dynamic, I'm going to talk about three things. First part, ADHD is 24/7. It is constant, around the clock. It doesn't stop when you're into your bedroom. It doesn't stop when it's 9 o'clock and the kids are down. It's with you all the time. And so you might be in the middle of having sex, realizing your partner is distracted. Their attention is wandering. They're thinking about other stuff. They might feel more bored more often than you with the sexual activities you're engaging in. They might be pushing boundaries or wanting to like explore new realms that you may not be comfortable with, might not be interested in, but kind of doing the same thing over and over is not probably going to work for them very well for very long. ADHD can cause impulsivity, kind of this like, I have an idea, I'm going to act on it without the filter of like, should I? Is this a good time? Is this a good place? Is this a good way? This also happens in sexuality. ADHD people tend to have higher rates of infidelity, sexually risky behavior, and unwanted pregnancies. So Weirdly enough, that stuff could be a symptom of ADHD, not an excuse, but a correlated to this diagnosis. I threw emotional regulation in there simply because part of their struggle is going to be regulating emotions. Things can feel really big, or they can get over stuff really fast. And either of these is going to kind of mess with your mind. So if you guys had a fight at dinner, you might be feeling fine. You might have resolved and moved on by the time the evening comes. They might still be in it, even if they've cognitively resolved with you. Their emotions haven't quite settled yet. So that can cause some problems. They might also be like, well, that happened before. This is now. Why are you still mad about that? So it can kind of go both ways. Bad days lead to bad nights. This is kind of what I was saying earlier, is if time is managed poorly throughout the day, you're going to end at the evening like really exhausted or still working. And even if you have managed your time well, your partner might be still over there working or hyper focusing on something. So it's going to bleed, like your daytime problems are going to bleed into your evening intimacy problems. There might be more mess and chaos in your lives and houses. If you're living together, they might not notice or care. I can rest looking at jobs. Usually I don't even notice some stuff. But my husband, he can't. So he'll have to go around and pick stuff up. And if he's always the one doing that, if he's always the one noticing, it's going to start to feel unfair or just cause more anxiety and tension. ADHD comes with a lot of symptoms and disorders and dysfunctions along with it, or that are just more likely that someone will have it if they have ADHD. That's what comorbid disorders are. Some of these, say there's anxiety or depression, are more common, right? So if your partner has ADHD plus depression, that's going to affect your intimacy and sex life. Even more so in some ways if they're on SSRIs that are affecting libido. So I'm just saying there can be kind of a ripple effect. It's not just ADHD. There's stuff that goes along with it too. Drive and desire. So Ari Tuckman is this therapist I mentioned who did a big old survey of ADHD and non-ADHD couples, like 3,000 of them. And his studies are really interesting. He wrote a book called ADHD After Dark, where he reported the findings of this study and kind of talked through it. So I've drawn from him a lot because he's one of the few people who's like working in this area. But I wanted to just throw out a couple facts he found, not related really. I'm not going to contextualize it or expand on it, but if you want to know more, go for it. You can look him up. Adults with ADHD report higher scores on scales measuring hypersexuality compared to non-ADHD people. So regardless of gender, ADHD people tend to have higher sex drives than people who don't. Both men and women with ADHD are at greater risk of experiencing sexual dysfunction. For men, that could be delayed ejaculation, erectile difficulties. Women with ADHD report challenges like lower satisfaction with orgasm and difficulty reaching orgasm during sex. Third one, like I mentioned, ADHD individuals, especially women, can engage more often in impulsive or risky behavior. And with women, it can be used as a form of emotional regulation. So if they're feeling distressed, it can be like a coping or a soothing activity for them. Good to know. Okay, so zooming back out, you might be feeling frustrated, resentful, tense, alone. Justifiably, a lot of these feelings and thoughts and experiences you're having are really valid. And I want to just start there and sit there for just a second, because before I move into the next part, which is more kind of action oriented, like what can you do? I just want to acknowledge what you have been doing, the effort that you've been making, the patience you've had, the times you've forgiven. the ways you've struggled and yet still find yourself continuing to struggle. So let's take a second to shift gears a little bit. We're going to talk about what ADHD is. And is it serious? Okay. So ADHD is a neurological disorder, meaning it has literally to do with how an ADHD person's brain is structured, their neurons are working, their neurotransmitters, how much of them there are, how consistent the levels of neurotransmitters are. This is, I'm going to skip to the bottom. This is a physiological, like a biological disorder with psychological and social consequences. So these brain differences over a lifetime end up creating differences in how someone might see themselves, how they might relate to others, what they think they can accomplish in life, whether they're able to succeed, whether they're failing. The effects are pretty far-reaching and deep. The main brain differences are in your frontal lobe, which is where your executive functions live. And your executive functions, to sum it up, are like the parts of your brain that help you succeed at life and look like you're succeeding at life and help you look responsible and like you're an adult. This is my personal summary. It's life management. So it's regulating motivation, attention management, ability to focus, ability to pay attention to time is a big one. Regulate impulses. This feeling time and seeing the future is also Tuckman. He kind of says, like, and it's true, time feels different to people with ADHD. The ability to know, like, okay, I have this thing on Friday. I should start now because I kind of feel Friday now. The problem is that someone with ADHD like really feels only now. And I think I read this somewhere, like for someone with ADHD, there's like now and not now. And if it's not now, it feels basically irrelevant. Like, what is that even? Why would I care? Because not now. Now has a magnetism and like this is how people get hyper focused. You're like, this is what I'm doing, and can completely lose track of the bigger picture. So executive functions have a lot to do with time, organization, prioritization, that kind of stuff. Is it serious? So my perspective of this has changed over the past 3 years, I guess, as I've been researching this and learning more about ADHD. My opinion right now is yes, and here's why. So people with unmedicated, unmanaged, untreated ADHD have higher rates of accidents, shorter lifespan by 7, or I've even seen up to 13 years. So shorter lifespan, which is crazy. Higher debt, higher rates of depression, anxiety, suicide, divorce, gambling, substance use disorders, more likely to be unemployed and underemployed, lower educational levels, higher rates of eating disorders, stress, and stress-related disorders. It's like real and it's serious. And I think the more we understand that, it helps us to see like, oh, this is hard because it's hard, both for the person with ADHD and the people around them. Like, oh, this is a real thing that we're grappling with. This is a real diagnosis with real consequences. So interestingly, we'll talk more about medication in a little bit. Medication specifically, but other treatments as well, can bring these statistics back to baseline, like average, some of them, which is incredible. That's incredibly effective. So that's awesome. But something like 90% of people who have ADHD never get diagnosed or treated. How do they know that? I don't know. I didn't look deeply into that statistic. But this myth that it's overdiagnosed, that it's over-medicated, is really just a myth, especially for women women are chronically underdiagnosed, and then they never get the help they need. They just are dealing with all this stuff on their own, thinking it's their own work or their own fault. So I just shot something I needed. Hold on. Nope, not that one. Nope, not that one either. Got it back. Okay. So what can we do? And by that, I mean, what can you, as the non-ADHD partner, how can you understand this differently? How can you think about your life differently, your relationship differently, your partner differently, to give you some hope and a forward trajectory? I don't know. Let's find out. Okay. First thing, and I approach therapy like this too. Before we can talk about change, we have to talk about acceptance. It is essential to start where you're at with this. So whether you just found out your partner got a diagnosis, or you've suspected it for a while, or you're just like starting to look around at your relationship being like, this is not working. Live with those feelings for a little bit, accept them as real. Your struggle is real, and your grief, potentially your frustration, it's all real. There's a reality about this diagnosis. It is a lifetime diagnosis. It is chronic. It's not going to go away. It's going to be part of your lives for as long as you're with this person, even if it gets better managed or whatever. So, if you didn't realize that, if you are at a spot where you thought that more help would be final healing for them, or more, they just need more knowledge and then they won't do this stuff anymore, you have to let that idea go and really ask yourself to, can you find acceptance here around your reality and theirs? Another reality is that you also have contributed to where you are at with your partner. ADHD transgressions can be so obvious and obnoxious and red flag and like big, annoying, that they often get a lot of attention. What doesn't get attention is that it takes two to tango here. That your reactions to their mistakes, your reactions to their tendency to not tell you the truth or to not own up to stuff, it can create cycles. And so all I mean to say is, while it can look like it can generally be cast like they're the bad ones, you're the good one. But that's not going to help you or them or the relationship move forward. It's time to take a look, if you haven't, at what you're contributing here. So we'll get a little bit more into that later. Your choices, I wanted to put that in there because you could feel victimized or powerless in the face of their diagnosis. The truth is, you do have power. You do have choices. If you're going to stick in this relationship, let it be intentional. So here's what you're actually going to do in real life. First job is letting go of some things, particularly things that maybe you've been worrying for them on their behalf about their life and their stuff that's not necessarily affecting you directly. That stuff you've got to let go of, some control. They are an adult, and the better relationship dynamic that you're going to go for is that you both get to be treated like adults. They get to fight their own battles. They get to face their own consequences. You can be there to support them, but their life is theirs and yours is yours. And kind of extricating that and getting some separation is going to help you to show up for them better and differently than in a parent role. You can decide with them. I said communicate ownership. Decide with them if you're like, hey, I can't keep doing this part. This has got to be yours. Could this be yours? And if they're like, yeah, I can do that, I think I can do that. I hope I can do that. Let it be theirs. And then even if they fail at it, continue to let it be theirs. Let them fix it. Let them amend the mistake, repair it. You're going to keep steady. You're going to have to acknowledge the fact that they might do it differently than you and possibly worse. When I'm in charge of making dinner, sometimes I have to tell my husband, listen, I know my brain doesn't work at dinner time. I can make dinner, but it's probably not going to be great. There's a chance it's going to be pretty lame, but it will be food. And I'm sorry. And that's the reality. You're going to just have to be okay with maybe lowering the bar a bit for things that they're in charge of. And it's going to be important because you can't do it all. So you have to let go of some of it. It's going to be good for both of you overall. As you do this, you're going to have to manage some of your own anxiety. Letting them fix it, expressing empathy if they don't, kind of treating them like a friend in a way, like in a good distance kind of way. Like, man, I know that feeling of missing deadlines and disappointing people. And even though that person happens to be me right now, I know that feeling kind of sucks. And so I'm sorry that happened. Good luck trying to fix it. And that's really dignifying actually for the person with ADHD to be able to fix their own mistakes. So often, I'd say in my life, I've had someone, my mom, and then someone else, even now my husband, scaffolding and rescuing. And we're getting to a spot in our marriage where I'm like, okay, I think I can rescue myself. And that feels really good. It gives me a thing to do instead of just sitting there feeling bad while someone fixes my mistake. I get to fix it. And that's, I don't know, it's weird, but I like it. Okay. A for effort. So ADHD responds very well to positive reinforcement and not so well to negative reinforcement. So studies have shown it's not like, I think we have this idea, and maybe with a neurotypical brain, this works, that like, oh, if there's a consequence, then you'll learn from that negative consequence. For some reason, it just doesn't work like that. And as a parent of ADHD kids, this has been really hard for me to wrap my mind around, because that's traditional parenting, a little bit like, well, you have to face the consequences, and then surely after 5, or 10 or 25 times, you will learn not to do that thing because of the consequences. And it's just not true. They just don't. What does work is positive reinforcement. So anything you can see that your partner is doing, give them the benefit of the doubt. They would generally choose not to piss you off. They would love to not have you be mad at them. I can pretty confidently speak for most people with ADHD. They're not doing it on purpose. ADHD is not a matter of that I won't do it, but like I can't, not consistently. I can't do those things. I can't perform like that. I would if I could, but I can't. It's not about you. It may feel so much about you, but it's just not. It's about them and their brain. And so getting on the same team with them is really going to help. When you're both able to like look at the symptoms as separate from the person and be like, oh, those symptoms, these specific ones are draining us. How can we work together to solve that? And we'll talk a little bit more practically in a little bit. Help if you can. If you can. And what I mean is you've been helping a lot, likely. You've been helping a lot in your partner's life. If you're going to help, do it with a full heart. See what you can offer without strings, without judgment, without shame. If you can give a reminder, hey, remember that bill you said you're going to do? It's due on Friday. And they're like, okay, thanks. I'm not very good at that, but they're like, okay, thanks. That's really nice. Great. Good job. If you're feeling like they keep missing the bills, if you're so full of resentment and frustration, it's better to not help. If you're watching them fumble through something and you're like getting annoyed that like, why, like this is easy, just set your alarms and then you won't be late. That kind of attitude, I've told my husband this before. I'm like, and I'd rather you said no. I would so much rather you said, I can't help you with a full heart than to say yes, but then I feel really bad about the help that I'm receiving. Ultimately, their life belongs to them. If you can help along the way, great. But it is their life. It is their responsibility. So we're looking for that separation of two adults, even if you decide you can help sometimes. Safety first. It's kind of a deeper one. I can't fully explain this in the time that I have, so I'm just going to touch on it. Your ADHD partner has had a lifetime of getting in trouble, of messing up, of being called to account, yelled at, whatever. They're expecting that from you when they mess up. And you might have justifiable anger for them doing or not doing something. But I will say that you can be right and still be wrong. And what I mean by that is you might be totally right in being mad, but it's actually doing the opposite in this situation. Trying to have compassion, forgiveness, patience, being soft when you want to be harsh, being kind when you want to yell. Doing the opposite is going to create this like weird thing in their brain where they're surprised, they'll be really grateful, they're expecting the hammer. If you give anything else besides that, that's like, it could really make them feel safe to come out of hiding, to unmask. You might find more of the vulnerability and intimacy that you have been hoping for, less of the defensiveness and thick skin. It can kind of, it'll just, I don't even know how to say it, kind of shakes my brain up when I receive kindness instead of, from anyone, not just my husband, but instead of the usual, like, yeah, I know I messed up. I have to grovel my hair. I don't know. What do you do about this one? I have to grovel now because I did it again. Not having to atone and not having to, I don't know, just bear guilt and shame, even if it's justified, is really nice and could really move your relationship into a different direction. Last one. We're almost there. It's been a long 40 minutes. We're getting close though. Do your own work. So these are 3 really tangible things, like practical action items that you can do. One is find a daily dose of ADHD information. So this for you and your ADHD partner is going to be really helpful to find things that are true about ADHD, to figure out other symptoms, how it shows up in life. Oh, and to be like, oh, that's why you do this, or that's why you struggle with that. It's going to make room for a lot of compassion, and just a different mindset for you that'll help you go towards your partner instead of wanting to run away, maybe. Taking responsibility is like acknowledging the part you've played in your dynamic, which I discussed earlier. And then think about the battles you want to fight. So literally choose 1 or 2 things that your partner's doing that's like, this is a hard line in the sand. This is like dangerous. Like, I don't know. I leave this stove on all the time. And even I know that's not good, especially I have kids in the house. Sometimes Charlie's not home. But I do it all the time. So it would be justified for Charlie to be like, hey, this is one area of life where this is the thing. You need to fix this. You need to figure this out. I can help you brainstorm ideas, but you've just got to do this. This is the hard line. And if you don't, this is not okay. They can't be everything though. So there's going to be, for every one of those things, like 100 other things that you're like, I'm not fighting that one today. Because even if you have a right to be upset about 100 things, your ADHD partner cannot absorb all those. It's not possible. So you're both going to end up frustrated. So choose a couple to start with. Communicate clearly, get help if you need to talk it through. We're so close. I just wanted to mention real quick, because I do have some people in here in this workshop who also have ADHD, or maybe they're a therapist with ADHD. There's so much information. This is why I did this workshop, because I feel like for an ADHD person, there's so much information that you can almost feel flooded. So I'm going to just tell you a quick snapshot of what they can do, because it is going to take both partners in this relationship to make this work. I hope you really appreciate this stock photo that I left in here. It's so cool. Okay. Getting treated, like I said, is the first line of defense. A stimulant medication for ADHD is among the most effective medication for any disorder in all of psychiatry, all of medicine. It's like ridiculously effective. So if you haven't tried it, consider it. If you have and you're like, it doesn't work for me, you might be on the wrong dose. Don't give up yet. If it causes side effects, that happens to some people, don't worry, there's other stuff. Okay. But most people, it works really well for when they have the right medication at the right dose. Therapy. So individual therapy is going to be huge if you can do it. My approach to ADHD therapy is kind of twofold. One, we talk about behavioral, like coaching stuff, like, okay, what's on fire right now? Let's get money in order, or let's get time in order, or you can't make it to work on time, or let's talk about food and eating. So we'll talk about the practical sides of life. Also, therapy can be a place to process some of that emotional, like anger about not getting diagnosed right away, feelings of shame and low self-esteem and lack of boundaries that often accompany ADHD. So my approach is both. Some people just need one or the other. That's also great. Exercise, diet, sleep, supplements, mindfulness, they're like good for all of us, and we're supposed to do them. They really help ADHD people. They help all of us, especially if you have ADHD. So they're like real, but so boring. Okay. I think I Can't Just Ain't Enough is from Michelle Silverstein poem. Trying harder is not going to work. You need better processes. You need solutions like, where are you going to put your keys every time you come into the house? Or what kind of alarm setting situation do you need to make sure you're not late to meetings? Or what kind of accountability? So building processes, building accountability that's external to you is better. It's going to work better than relying on internal motivation and accountability. Same thing with brain functions. If you can externalize anything into your phone in a way that's, I could talk about this for a while, but getting stuff out, getting jobs out of your head and into the world somewhere, delegating that stuff is going to be helpful. Okay. In short, here's a quick summary. Let it go. Let their life be theirs. Don't fix their mistakes. Don't prevent their mistakes. Stop worrying about their stuff. Stop taking it personal. So these are all like don'ts. And stop feeling like you got to swoop. Let them be in charge of their life. Instead, think about put some attention back into what you can do, what changes you can make, learning about ADHD, figure out your preferences, figure out your hard lines versus your things you're going to let go. Feel your emotions when you need to, learn some emotional regulation so that you can react calmer when the next time comes that they screw up, and offer help, reminders, when you can with a full heart. And remember why you like them in the first place. ADHD can be so awesome. And your ADHD person, there's a reason you're with them. So try to remember those things too. Okay. All you need is love. Sometimes love just ain't enough. Individual therapy, couples therapy. I forgot the two people here. And community. There's so much support online. In real life, there's groups. Couples counseling can be a great place to go if you're stuck. Individual therapy also can be a great support. It just kind of depends what you need and what's available in your situation. this is where I am. If you need me, I'd be happy to work with you. I would be happy to work with your ADHD partner. There's help and there's hope. So I hope that you have gained some encouragement. If this brought up more questions than it answered, email me and we can chat. This is really just such a broad brush of a really big topic that could be explored. So I hope it was helpful. I'm really glad for all of you who showed up. Let me know later if you want the link or if you want more resources, books, podcasts, that kind of stuff. You can email me. And I think I'm going to sign off now. So thank you for being here.